Hello and welcome. This is the third of a series of 4 discussions between the attorneys at Nixon Peabody and engineers at GHD. They're designed to capture the cutting edge key issues that Nixon Peabody and GHD are collaborating on in the food and beverage market. Today, I am Alison Torbitt, I'm partner in the San Francisco office. I am the team leader of the environmental group, as well as the co-chair of the Legally Green Sustainability Initiative and the Food, Beverage, and Agribusiness Industry Initiative. I am joined today by a celebrity in the water world, Paul Bowen. Paul is a water and sustainability environmental engineer at GHD. I first met Paul in 2015 when he was on the stage at WEFTech, which is the Water Environment Federation Technical Conference, where about 20,000 people were there in New Orleans and Chicago. They switch back each year. It's actually a member organization around 35,000 to talk about water and all things water. Water infrastructure, water reuse, conservation, how to treat it. It is an amazing organization. And I am so excited here to have this conversation today with Paul.
Good to see you, Alison.
Great to see you. So with no surprise, today we're talking about water. So what are the top 3 water topics right now in the food and beverage industry that you are seeing, Paul?
It's a great conversation to have around water, particularly with respect to food and beverage, because water is either a main ingredient or it's used extensively within the manufacturing process. And so with that great use of water, conservation is probably the key issue with respect to water for the food and beverage industry. And it can either come through minimization, simply finding more efficient processes that use water, or what we're seeing now is reuse. And that to me is one of the keys, is how can we as a food and beverage sector reuse, recycle, reclaim more water for use in our manufacturing processes. That's a real challenge because of the regulatory environment around food and beverage, but it's something that I believe we can tackle and help that industry conserve more water. Now, that water is not the only environmental issue that the beverage industry, food and beverage industry is facing. There's carbon and greenhouse gas associated with, the manufacturing process, the delivery of ingredients, and then there's recycling of packaging, particularly plastic packaging, and how that impacts their bottom line. So, there's a lot on the plate. Water in many cases is first and foremost, but it also, it kind of, I'll be honest with you, it kind of cycles. One year it's water, the next year it's carbon, and then the next year it's packaging, or it may be carbon 2 years in a row. It's a real challenge to maintain the focus on a particular topic because of the externalities that take place.
Cover those challenges and then finding solutions for that. And then one of the organizations that you're part of is BEER, or you helped found, I believe, BEER. Talk to us about what that is and, what does it stand for? It's Beverage Industry Environmental Roundtable.
That is correct. And I did help start that about 20 years ago. We got a group of beverage companies together, about 6 of the major beverage companies in North America and the world got together to discuss how we could have a common response to the threats we were getting around our water use. And so how you could report water use as in the same language, using the same terminology. And that was really, it was technical people. It was people that knew how to do those calculations that came to the meetings. It was engineers. Nothing against senior VPs, but it wasn't the people that were in charge. It was the people that were doing the work that came to the meeting and helped develop responses. And it was so successful that other members of the food and beverage industry wanted to join. I think there are like almost 20 members now. And it's everything from soft drinks to bottled water to distilled spirits to beer. And the collaboration that exists between those groups, the partnering that exists between these companies is amazing. And because it's a technical group, we don't do any lobbying. We provide information. We provide technical responses. In fact, there's a benchmarking study that the group does every 2 years that's widely circulated. And they help find answers to not only water problems, but greenhouse gas problems and packaging. And when they're trying to work on the environmental issues that are common to the food and to the beverage industry and how we can find solutions to those.
Get so many brilliant minds in one room to figure out the solutions together collaboratively and not be competitive is amazing.
Yep. The competitive part is tricky, and we have procedures and policies in place to make sure we don't violate anything. So, but it's the fact that everyone in the room wants to solve the problem is what makes the group function well.
Fantastic. So speaking of solving problems, I know one of the times that we work a lot together is on mergers and acquisitions and dispositions of property. When a company is looking to either buy or sell or merge in with their company facility. And I know we talk a lot about water needs and rights. Do they have the water they need for current production? And one thing we talk about that's really interesting, I think, for our listeners is about kind of talking about growth. Do you have actually the water you need to grow the property? What are some of the water risks in addition to that we should be looking at?
Those are I like using the term risk, particularly water risk, because when you can identify those, then people understand that term of risk, particularly managers and presidents and vice presidents, understand that when there's a risk to the business, it has to be mitigated. And you're right. When you start looking at mergers and acquisitions and those types of things, you're doing that to grow the business. And if you don't have the water that you need to grow the business, whether it's as an ingredient or for manufacturing, then that's a risk to the business. Mm-hmm. And that can come because you don't have the permits, and you need to get more permits for withdrawal or more permits for disposal. It can come because you simply don't have the water. There are places that don't have enough water. So how do you continue to grow this business with the limited resources that you have? So that's always a challenge. And to me, it's the number one challenge you face when you look at this field of food and beverage and mergers and acquisitions. There's a whole thing, and like I mentioned, permitting. And then there's another issue around stormwater and the disposal of stormwater for the impermeable surfaces that surround many of our facilities is kind of a hidden risk that many people don't fully investigate.
Yeah, right now here in California, we're just getting pummeled with stormwater. It's just been coming and coming for weeks. And I know I have a few clients who have such an impermeable storm parking lots, and in addition, they're actually bermed in, and that water now is 2 or 3 feet tall, causing lots of potential for emergency releases, as well as just how do you discharge that water now and get rid of it?
Exactly, and it can be not just 2 feet of water; it can be a couple of inches that now might be contaminated by oil and grease and other contaminants that are in a parking lot that cause significant problems to discharge.
Exactly. And there's all notification requirements with that. If there is indeed a release of something,
exactly,
even if it's something you can eat, it can still be considered hazardous depending on how it's been released and the
exactly.
impact of the environment. So one thing we talk about the true cost of water, which I think is really interesting for our listeners. And going beyond, it's not just what you pay for the water, it might be all these other factors as well. Can you talk to us a bit about that?
Yeah, that's again, if I go back to the previous thoughts around, what's the business risk, you don't really think of water's, again, as you buy water, it's fairly inexpensive. It's probably, one of the least expensive ingredients that you buy compared to electricity, natural gas. But if you really look at what the true cost of water is, which is the cost you buy to buy the water, the cost you then add to treat water, whether you're treating it to meet specific requirements for production or specific requirements for ingredients, there's a cost to treating that water. Then maybe you have to heat the water, cool the water for additional impacts. So now you've added significant cost to that water before you even think about what have I got to do to dispose of this water? Or if I'm not going to dispose it, I'm going to reuse it. What's the cost to reuse? And so all those things add up, whether it's the cost to dispose, the cost to treat it to dispose, those things all add up. It's the cost coming in, it's the water bill, it's the wastewater bill, it's everything in between. Beer has a true cost of water toolkit that answers some of these questions, gives you a template to go through and kind of say, what do I need to add in to get this true cost of water? And once you get that true cost of water, those water conservation projects, those reuse projects, now the ROI on those is much better than it would have been by just looking at the bill that comes into the office.
I can't help but think, though, you do all that work to get the true cost of water, and then your water supplier changes the supplier on you, and all of a sudden you're going from, say, a lake to a different stream or a different quality of water, desal plant. And that true cost of water gets redone yet again.
Well, yeah, because your internal costs are probably going to change. Your external costs, the cost to buy the water, the cost to discharge may not change, but that internal cost is going to change. And, it happens. It happens all over the country as people, cities that pull from different sources. They may have two different wells that had two different qualities, or they have a well in a lake, and all of a sudden they're changing their source of water and you're getting a different quality of water. And, you kind of have to, again, look at what the risks are and how you can mitigate those risks.
Fascinating. Well, thank you so much, Paul. It's been a great conversation today. What's one or two takeaways you would have for our listeners here in the food and beverage industry?
I think to me, where the food and beverage industry stands right now is they're standing at kind of a crossroads. Do we continue to try to just minimize the amount of water we use, or do we look hard at reuse? And I think the reuse path is becoming more clear. I think it's becoming more open to discussion as we move forward. That's going to be where conservation occurs, is by reusing water, using those drops over and over again. Yes, we'll continue to minimize, processes will become more efficient, but reuse is really going to move the needle forward as we move forward in the coming years. And I would encourage all the members of all the industries out there to look at joining the Water Environment Federation. They're examples of great work that organization does with respect to industrial work. And then if you're in the beverage industry, consider joining beer. The more minds we have, the better that organization is.
Yeah, don't reinvent the wheel. I think we have so many people already talking about these solutions. Figure out how to further that along instead of starting from scratch.
Exactly. Great group of people.
Well, thank you so much, Paul. It's been great to have the conversation today. And anytime you want to talk water, I'm excited and ready for you.
Good. We'll do this again sometime, I hope.
Thank you.
Thank you.